What is going on tonight? What is going on? when I set this up to say the world is fucked, I didn't mean this here. What is happening? I take a bit of time. Welcome back, first of all. Welcome back to another episode of the Deductionist podcast. I turn up, and all of a sudden, something's changed with Twitter. You can't stream over there. Something's changed on Facebook groups. You can't do the whole thing's crashing internally. You know what it is? It is clearly Jewish space lasers. What happened, everybody? What happened to the world? I took a little bit of time off for work. Political figures are trying to be shot. There's riots in the streets. There's people talking absolute gibberish and nonsense and bullshit. Wherever you look, what is happening to the world right now? Good afternoon to everybody. Stacey Rowell, I've never seen your name before, but welcome. Welcome. Board's here as well. Good afternoon. So yes, we are back. Took a bit of time off as I've been working through. That's not the proper English term. Working in America. So rather than kind of get the streams up here, there, and everywhere, I kind of just took charge to bring you back to the usual time, usual place, and just pop up randomly. No announcements, really, and then just seeing how everyone's doing. So, how are you? It's been a while. I hope you're all coping with whatever is happening in your neck of the woods, because it's definitely going a little bit haywire over here in the UK. It's definitely on the cusp of going bananas in the States. So wherever else, best of luck to you. Best of luck to you. Wowzers. Mohammed Padilla and Mohammed Syed, welcome. Welcome. In terms of Mr. Padilla, what are some books you recommend? What on? That's a very ambiguous topic. You could go through the Sherlock Holmes canon. The Lord of the Rings novels are pretty good. But if you mean something more specific, then target your question, sir. Target your question. So we're here today to kind of look at some of the focal points of what's been happening in the world, but with a view to how we can think about them with a little bit more clarity. One of the things that I've spent a great deal of time studying, and it's particularly pertinent with the concepts of deductive reasoning and observation, and this kind of life that we choose to lead, and this kind of life that we choose to live. Right? We can actually get to some books in a minute, Mohammed. I've, in case it wasn't obvious, I've prepared a few. I've prepared a few. There's a couple that are relevant. Most of them aren't, and most of them are left over from previous sessions. Mr. Syed, you're clearly new here. You're clearly new. We'll get to all of those particular questions later on. Let's have a look at the focus of this for today, right? With whatever you've seen and with whatever you've observed in your observational role, there is a possibility, however awesome you are at it, that you're going to misconstrue or misunderstand or misrepresent something, right? And this is why I've spent a great deal of time with Dr. Richard Paul's critical thinking methods, namely the 8 elements of reasoning and the 9 standards of thought. There are YouTube videos on this as well. There are a series of between an hour and 10-minute lectures from the guy. There's tons of them, and it's all valuable and good stuff. And it becomes particularly pertinent to some of the nonsense and kind of noise of opinions and feelings that seem to take up a lot of social media nowadays, But really, for what we're talking about here, it helps us to cut to the crux of the matter, to get to the truth of information, to see information for how it is, rather than how we believe it to be, right? Because they are two very different things. They might cross over on occasion, totally, but you need to be clear on the exact specifics of what the information's speaking to when it is that you're observing it, right? So I'm going to be using a lot of current examples. Um, and this is the great thing about the notion of critical thinking. It cannot judge. It's just an observation of information. It doesn't claim to be right or wrong. It just spits out the most likely impression of all of the relevant data when it's put together, right? The actions, the judgment, the whatever it is that you want to use it for, that will come after the fact. Depends on what you want to use it for, right? If you've determined person A is whatever they are in relation to person B, and you know all the rest of it, right? So those things, first of all, I actively encourage you to look up, um, namely the standards of thought when we're dealing with clarity, precision, accuracy, depth, breadth, logicalness, fairness, relevance, and significance. All of these particular concepts are rife within any thought. And for you to be observing anything, whether it be a thought or a piece of non-verbal communication or some kind of thing, instance, or whatever it is, there are thoughts that have affected its particular position in that moment. So when you are analyzing its significance, it is significant, relevant to the rest of the information rather than your personal opinions of significance therein. It requires justification. It requires it requires kind of impartial referential data. You know, we've heard this Holmesian quote of data, data, data. I cannot make bricks without clay. The clay would be this standard of thought. The clay would be these elements of reasoning, right? And if you take any observation and any particular point of view, belief, thought, opinion, motivation, whatever it is, and you run it through these 17 things, the degree of, no pun intended, because it's one of the standards, the degree of precision you would get on the other side is so much more so than what would happen before the event. Like, speaking from current circumstances, in the UK, there are currently a swath, a collection. It needs a collective noun of like there are a murder of crows, a school of fish. What would a good collective noun be for the amount of bell ends that are on the street?
Or flamboyance of the flamboyance of flamingos or flamboyance of dickheads.
Well, the flamboyance of dickheads. It I like that. A dalliance of dickheads. There it is. A dalliance of dickheads on the street, right? And this is the kind of thinking that is largely going into their movements. And I don't just mean their bowel movements, which are clearly more intelligent than they are. This is a kind of a mantra that comes out of their mouths on occasion, right? We want our country back. From who? From what? Right? We want our country back. It's emotive, sure. It's a strong opinion, sure. It means nothing. Right? If we look at clarity, precision, and accuracy, which me and my colleagues, we consider those three to be the holy three when you're looking to really understand the deeper meanings and deeper connections of whatever it is that you've seen or you've heard somebody say or the action somebody's taken, right? We want our country back. From who? From what? Where's it gone? Who put our country into a cupboard under the stairs somewhere? Are the politicians and, you know, to some degree, the royalty, are they still not in charge anymore? Who actually owns a country? I don't know that. Who owns the country? This this kind of nonsensical line lacks clarity, precision, and accuracy. So much so that it is designed only to whip up feelings. It is designed only to whip up action and distinctly a lack of thought in the process. Right? There was another thing. Like I was in Mississippi when Trump was shot at. Right? Americans are losing their mind, regardless of whatever side of the line it fell on. And because of my role, I'm getting asked about certain things, and then you're shown sketchy videos of what do you think about this woman in the background? She's looking dodgy, and all she's doing, she might be dodgy. Bear in mind, just to kind of put that out there, but all she's doing is she's wearing sunglasses and turning her head. While she's not reacting to the gunfire, neither are thousands of other people. No clarity, no precision, no accuracy. And then there's videos coming out from the other side of an apparent Secret Service member showing signs of he knew it was coming beforehand and ducking down beforehand. And the only real observational piece of judgment that people were taking towards this was the fact that he was wearing sunglasses, and they look similar to the other Secret Service agents' kind of sunglasses. Right? Where's the clarity? Where's the precision? Where's the accuracy in that? Do you even know what his role is? There's something within the notion of cognitive biases and fallacies that exist that affect the way that we think. It's called the fundamental attribution error. In that, if something happens, like say for example, me and you were having a conversation, right, and then all of a sudden you start to go quite quiet and reserved, and then I can start thinking, oh God, what am I doing? What have I just done that's affected or upset this particular person? Oh God, what did I say? What's happened? What's gone awry in that moment? And all they've started to do is think about where the nearest bathroom is. I've attributed all of those changes to more of a personal circumstance. So to that degree, it's kind of a cognitive bias as well, right? There is this kind of thing. Well, in the UK, because the dalliance of dickheads that are filling the streets are racist. There's no two ways about it. If you stop any one of them, they're not looting nearby shoe stores to defend our country from um, from a failing education system. They believe they're doing it to defend our country from immigrants. And so okay. So what do you mean when you say immigrants? And then you hear these guys, well, Asians and black people. Okay. We have Polish immigrants, we have French immigrants, we have American immigrants, we have Bulgarian immigrants. Why are they not bothering you? Right? Why are they not bothering you? You know, and this kind of thing keeps coming up. It's more clarity, precision, and accuracy that's required in those statements. This is how you get to the crux of what it is. They are using these, and let's just kind of back up. Right, there was an evil situation that happened in the UK. Evil. I don't think there's a strong enough kind of adjective that you can use to describe its kind of evil. There were three young girls that were killed at a Taylor Swift party, like a Taylor Swift appreciation party or a fan party or something along those lines. And someone went in and stabbed them. And then this kind of incendiary action has taken note from there. Right? I would want to stop them in the streets, if they stop throwing their pebbles for a moment and say, cool, you believe you are defending our country from all of the grief that all of these people are causing. So why did you just put that shop window through? It's a fair question. It's something that is a search for clarity, for precision, for accuracy. When those three elements are gone, this is when it speaks to that classic Sherlock phrase that we've spoken about many times in the emotional qualities being antagonistic to clear reasoning, right? When you've been arguing with somebody for so long that you lose track of whatever it is that you were arguing about in the first place. There's no clarity, there's no precision, there's no accuracy, and you've lost track of all things that have become relevant, and you've gone really deep on this one particular point without a consideration for the breadth of its effects. Yeah. There's people talking about Trump's ear now, in terms of when he was shot at, and I know next to nothing about guns, but I know that an AR-15 is a big one, right? That is the limit of my gun knowledge. Who am I to say what that kind of a gun would do to an ear? Right? You can connect it to things like, well, when Mike Tyson bit off Evander Holyfield's ear, there was loads of blood and there was this and this. Okay, sure. Do you know, with the degree of clarity, precision, and accuracy, do you know that a bite and a bullet would do the same thing? Because if you don't, you're filling in the details with your emotion without the information at hand, right? And I say this all not to, because I don't have the information or the dog in the fight. I'm not an American. It's just an observation. I am fundamentally embarrassed to be English at the minute, based on what those idiots are doing on the streets. Fully embarrassed. But this is the same connection towards anything. Whether we're observing body language in an interrogation that we are witnessing, or whether we are observing objects Locard has exchanged information with on the way out. These attribution errors and these ways of thinking about what it is that we've seen can really help refine the specifics of the information that's connected to it, right? So here is one of the first books that I want people to know about that will affect the way that you think about things. Yes, it is a therapy book, right? But it's not about that. It's about the information that you get from anyway, because it is logic-based. Logic-based therapy. It's a form of psychotherapy. I'll put that down there because of the next one. It's a form of psychotherapy that combines elements of philosophy. Well, I was trying to say philosophical whilst thinking about philosophy. It combines philosophy and cognitive behavioral therapy, right? It's based on the idea that our emotional responses are largely influenced by how we think about events rather than the events themselves. Right? So some of the key principles in that, emotional responses are logical conclusions. But logical conclusions to what? Because that particular sentence could be connected to the requirement for logic-based therapy in the first place. So it suggests that our emotions are the result of logical deductions from our beliefs or our premises, right? A belief and a premise, it leaves out certain fundamental truths, right? Because if you ask anyone, can you believe something and know it at the same time? 9 times out of 10, you'll get the answer that you can't, because you can't, right? Even for those people that believe in any God, right? If you believe in any God, that's awesome for you, but you can't know that God exists. There is a leap, but this is where faith comes in, right? And this is that kind of decision that's there. So you are doing your best to apply logic to and deductions, which are cause and effect elements. I've seen this, therefore this. That is a deduction. But to do that from something that is built upon a lack of information, right? Whether you can get the information or not is not something I'm splitting hairs over. But that's the struggle in and of itself, right? So it seeks then to identify the faulty reasoning that's gone into it. This is where the therapy angle would come into, but with a little bit more self-awareness and a little bit more emotional regulation, you can identify and even challenge any irrational or illogical thought patterns that lead to these negative emotions arising, right? I'd spoken about it a while back. I had a similar situation end of June when we went to the seaside for Phoebe's birthday. I'm terrified of the ocean, terrified. And it comes back to the witness of, let's call it a shark bitey encounter. Let's call it that. I can still see it, but it's something that stuck with me. Anyway, so as I'm stood in the front part of the water, I'm watching Phoebes jump around, having a good time, enjoying a birthday, playing in the ocean. She's cold for sure, but I'm watching her go further and further out, and I'm just focused on her in that particular minute. And the second the cold water came up and, let's say, caressed my twig and berries, I was brought back to where I was, and the fact that in God knows how many years, I couldn't tell you exactly, maybe over a decade, but God knows how many years, I had never been past my knees in the ocean when I'm walking. And that moment, it all came back. Building willpower around challenging this faulty, irrational, albeit I felt well-reasoned outcome of being scared of the ocean because all of this thing exists in the fine, I'm sure it does. Doesn't exist where I am though. Well, it doesn't exist on the shorelines of Blackpool. So this kind of therapeutic practice, it kind of emphasizes that importance of developing the willpower to challenge a negative thought pattern and change your behaviors around it, right? I mean, it also encourages the cultivation of virtue, specifically like cardinal virtues, wisdom, justice, temperance, these types of things. And the reason this sounds especially philosophical in the roots of observations that are connected to real world things and this sciencey, detective-y, Sherlocky way is because whatever you've seen's got to be processed up here. So if you aren't efficient enough in processing the information up here, you're going to struggle. This is why training for that should be at times annoying, because you're either learning new points of view, learning how to think about elements in new ways. You're neuroplastically forging new pathways all the time, right? So it kind of, I mean, this LBT approach, as it's known throughout the book, no prizes for guessing why, so you're catching the reflection. L B O T. This LBT approach for it, it's kind of a structured approach to understanding the nuance of belief X, whatever that is, right? So there'll be core elements that go into these specific beliefs, right? I believe that Donald Trump will be a good president. I believe that Donald Trump will be a bad president. I believe that Kamala Harris will be a good president. I believe that Kamala Harris will not be a good president. I believe that these people coming over here taking on. Just as a side note towards that effect, the racists that exist on the street, the immigrants coming over here, taking our jobs, bringing their culture, that's just not British. I urge anyone with that particular point of view, just read about the British Empire. Right? We essentially, however many years ago it was, I don't know the year off the top of my head, but a number of years ago, went over to pretty much everywhere in the world, particularly parts of India and the like were quite infamous for stories around this area. Britain rocks up and basically says, never mind all of your wonderful food and your flags and your language, speak English and put our flag up. Right? That is British. It shouldn't be, but it is. Anyway, So we can use clarity, precision, and accuracy to identify core beliefs about anything. Same racist people exist in Turkey too. Ah, it sucks, mate. It sucks. It sucks. I mean, there's a side note again about why these English racist idiots are so kind of no, they are existing in a world without clarity, precision, accuracy, depth, breadth, logicalness, relevance, significance, and fairness. Benidorm exists as kind of a second England, whether it be most of the UK going over there for a lovely holiday, or moving there. And there's people that have spent 20, 30 years out there, never learned a word of Spanish. Well, it's okay, everyone speaks Spanish around here. That's not the point. That is hypocrisy in its finest hour. Anyway, this is why I say it's particularly embarrassing to be English at the UK at the moment on the national stage. Moving back to LBT for a minute. You can use these elements of thought to identify the core motivational factors of any particular belief by asking questions that are connected to each of them. Right? If you're asking for the depth of a connection, you might ask how long somebody's thought this, or what are the things that you've done to encourage that. How deep does this rabbit hole go? If you're asking for breadth, what other areas does it connect to, right? So in identifying these moments, you are looking at whatever the underlying assumptions are that influence their thoughts, their emotions, and therefore their behaviors. Right? And that's the key point. It's an assumption. Because as we said before, an assumption has to be moved upon without a certain degree of data. Right? This is why I have such a problem with the word guess. It might sound like a joke to some, but if you are guessing, it's based on nothing. Right? If you're basing it on something, it ain't a guess. Right? You might need more data to kind of sharpen it down and the like, but it's not a guess thing. Well, it's an educated guess. That's an oxymoron. An educated guess would be tossing a coin so many times in a row, and then because you've had 3 heads in a row, I educatedly guess that a 4th will come up. It's nonsense. So once you've got that discovered, you can then start to analyze its logical structures. I'll come back to that board in a sec. Let me pop that on the screen so people know I'm going to come back to it. Lucid dreaming. Okay? We'll come back to it. Logical structures, right? You can then, with targeted questions, look to break down the thought processes into logical steps to uncover any flaws or any inconsistencies. And I've touched upon this in certain training sessions as well. But think of it this way: if A to B as something, as a belief, thought, action, what it cause and effect of a situation, if A to B makes sense, great. B to C makes sense, lovely. C to D makes sense, chuffed to bits for you. D to E makes sense, happy days. Then by default, A to E has to make sense. B to D has to make sense. C to A has to make sense. For the cause and effect right the way through, this is the logical structure of the breakdown. So therefore, you can challenge your rationality that way. And this is why there is an inherent benefit over gaining control over your emotions, not in the kind of robotic sense, but that's why people like his name's got that's why people like James O'Brien pisses off so many people, because he just calmly points things at. Agree with him, don't agree with him, that's not what I'm saying, but he calmly points things out to deconstruct somebody's less than fully fledged thought. And the same is with anything, right? If you saw a cup on a table and you induced right-handed because of the way that the handle was there, cool. What else could it be? Right? Is the only way to hold a cup by the handle? Does the chair facilitate a right-handed person putting their cup, right? Do you know what I mean? These are the kinds of questions that you can look to connect that towards. It's very easy to feel like you are deducing that somebody's right-handed because a mouse is on the right-hand side. But this has no wire. So for want of a phrase that doesn't teeter on smut, I can put this wherever I like. This is challenging your own predisposition towards degrees of rationality, right? This is what we are looking to do. We are looking to enter into a situation and be armed with more information than anyone there. Than anyone. The notion after the fact is then to develop alternative thoughts, alternative angles. What else could it be? There's a question that I harp on about day in, day out because it's so poignant, and it's from the world of super forecasting. What if I'm wrong? Doesn't assume you're wrong or feel you're wrong or get nervous about whatever it is you're thinking about. But in nearly just asking yourself that one particular question, you have to then look at all the information before and in your light. You have to. This is the quality standpoint of logic-based therapy in that way. It doesn't have to be for a therapeutic angle, but for us as observers of humans, the deconstructing of any belief, whether it be someone else's or our own, is important for understanding the truth of the matter, right? Because when people talk about my truth or your truth, that pisses me off a little bit because truth is truth. There's no degree of gradiency to it. There is either the truth or your opinion. Right? That's the differences. I'm not saying that anybody isn't entitled to an opinion. Of course you are. But when you say my truth, you're attempting to give weight and gravitas to something that is just an opinion. And opinions are like arseholes in that everyone has one. And so rarely do you want to hear from them. Right? And so connecting to the review for virtues is this. Now I'm going to put this book is so big it could be a weapon. Right? Have we seen is it John Wick 3, where he kills the tall guy at the start with the book? This would have been it. Martin Seligman wouldn't be happy, but that's the notion of it. Now, if you haven't read this, word of warning, it is quite dry. It is quite dry as a read. Very important, very kind of salient and significant data, but it is a challenge in parts. All right. And if you want to know why virtues are of particular importance, then I refer you to the other episodes that I've done on the topic and the like. So, when we are looking at these current affairs, we can apply a little bit of clarity, a little bit of precision, a little bit of accuracy. We do this more and more and more every day. Our observational eye by default has to become sharper because we are constantly searching for more data. And notice I chose those words carefully. We're not searching for things to confirm. That is a bias. We are searching for more data. Then we determine its relevance. Then we determine its significance. Right? Applying these approaches to our work as deductionists is ultimately going to help us see more, interact with more, notice more than everyone else because we are setting these to be able to look for it. Right? We're not blinded by the rage and noise of emotion. Okay? So with me calling the episode "The World is Fucked," how clear is that as a statement? How precise? How accurate? It's a valid question. When you think about it, it's very easy for us to, it's very easy for me over here and to see riots going on up and down the country and be, oh God. Does that mean the country's over? Because it's all you see on the internet and the news for a couple of days? No. Brighton, you lovely group of people. I don't know if it happened anywhere else, but in Brighton, after a few days of these kind of riots with thousands of these wankers patrolling the streets, the good folks of Brighton, out in force to show a peaceful protest, just surrounded a small group of racists and were starting to chant at them, just doing nothing, standing there. The police were there and all sorts. It virtually looked like they were having to protect the racists. There were these small little group of people in one corner, surrounded by a swath of angels. That was good to see, right? Which, if you'd have let yourself fall into the lack of critical thinking connection based on earlier situations, you wouldn't have thought that. You wouldn't have seen its potential for beauty and hope. This is why critical thinking is a superpower. Superpower is an opinion, but it's why critical thinking is needed today in everything. It's arguably one of the strongest tenets of being a deductionist, your ability to put things together based on as many different points of view, opinions, details, data, inference that might not potentially agree with your own, but you have to roll with it because you're not searching to be right, you're searching for what is there. Okay, let me go back and have a look at a couple of these comments now. Mohammed Padilla, those books. I missed the I missed the 2000s and the fruiting arrow. Is that it? Yeah, that was nice. What am I advising for a starter deductionist? The short answer would be get a copy of the monographs 1 and 2. Yeah, it's a bit salesy because I wrote them. Sue me. They're a great starting point for the wide breadth of the skill sets, not just one or two particular things. Non-fiction books that help with logic and thinking, also deductive reasoning. So we've seen them as well, and I've mentioned this guy time and time again. Rolf Dobelli has a series of books on this, but in particular, if you just want one to start, The Art of Thinking Clearly. In a certain way, we can even think it's basically impossible to have 100% objective vision because of neuroscience, and all we see is a brain prediction and interpretation of the world. Totally. I've spoken about it before. We cannot turn our biases off. We would either be robots or dead. And we as humans, we function as prediction correction algorithms. Right? I stumbled across a good analogy that I used in a session a while back. How many doors have you interacted with in your life? Right? If a door is closed, you might predict that by turning the handle or turning the knob or whatever, you open it and there are things on the other sides. But speakeasies during the Prohibition era, they set up a series of fake doors. So for when the police would come, they would predict and have to correct and do this. And when there's nothing to correct upon, there is no logic there to connect it to. Oh yes. Do I think that lucid dreaming can also help with this in the way of questioning, etc.? The short answer is I don't know. I've never experimented with lucid dreaming as a way to help specifically with your questioning techniques. I would be interested to hear about your journey through it. How's that? I don't know. To make something up would be a disservice to you. It's not something I've ever tried. Doesn't mean that it wouldn't work. I often find myself getting lost in my thoughts when I'm trying to deduce. I find myself zoning out in thought. Why is this and how to prevent it? It's because your brainwave state is misaligning to the task at hand. You're either moving too fast or too slow. You want to find physical interrupters to an emotional state, right? You know, if somebody's told you something funny and you want to laugh, but it's not the time to do it, you get that, and you hold it in. The more you hold it in, it wants to come out. So you're looking to recorrect the thought pattern based upon a physical interrupter. Next time you find yourself zoning out, create something that stops why that happened. Stop and analyze it. What is it that took my attention away? How did it take it? How long did it take it? How strong did the attention take? Right? All of these particular things. What is it that started my attention being taken away? Is it nerves? Whatever it is. Yeah, everything can be a weapon depending on your anger. Totally. Instagram banned in Turkey and people started to talk end of the country. Lots of emotions. Totally. I get it. Sad times. But definitely the monographs will help you to save lots of time. Totally. Couldn't have said that better myself, sir. So with that in mind, folks, I'm going to love you and leave you with those particular thoughts. Make sure you increase your logic-based therapy approach today, and your deductions and inferences will become much clearer by default.